Well, you mentioned a couple names before I let you go. You mentioned Belichick and Carroll. There's Gruden also. Rank for me 1 through 3. Rank those guys in terms of the possibility of them landing any of these 6 positions we just mentioned over the last 15 minutes. Tom.
So we've got Gruden,
Belichick, and Pete Carroll. Yep.
And we've got Pete.
You got to rank them 1, 2, 3.
I mean, that's hard. So let me start with this. Jon Gruden, as much as people have focused on, well, he hasn't interviewed for any jobs, Gruden was never going to interview for jobs out of the gate. Really, any coach that accomplished, and that applies to some of the other guys too, the way that this thing is set up, it's going to take a while. You have to go through these different things, not just for Rooney Rule purposes, but based on the hiring practices and the guidelines, not being able to interview people who are in playoff games in person until next week. Even guys who didn't miss the playoffs, you can't interview them in person until next week if they're still under contract with teams. If Gruden's going to end up in the mix for any of these jobs, it's probably going to happen over the next couple of weeks. It was not going to happen to this point. In terms of Pete Carroll, you'd probably put him at number 1 just because he's actually interviewed for a couple of jobs. I don't get the sense, not ruling him out, but I don't get the sense that he's a primary candidate right now for Chicago. Could he be a pivot in Vegas after his interview there? I think that's possible. I thought Pete, if he had wanted to get involved last year, and if the Raiders hadn't been laser focused on Antonio Pierce, I think Pete quite possibly would have been in the mix for the Raiders job last year. That brings us to Bill Belichick. And I am acutely aware of what Mike Lombardi continues to post on every social media operation, saying the NFL is not an option. Bill doesn't want to go to the NFL. We laugh about the NFL. It's a joke to us. He only wants to be at the University of North Carolina. I also know Bill Belichick, who, for years with players and coaches, kind of had a rule. You're supposed to speak about yourself only. We've not heard directly from Bill Belichick on any of these things. The facts right now are he's gotten calls from teams. He did get a call from Tom Brady at one point. He has not signed a contract. That I know that's not unusual at North Carolina, but when I referenced a couple of weeks ago some of the questions about whether or not there would potentially be, whether Bill Belichick or a new team would even have to pay that $10 million buyout, that's what I was referring to, which was there's not a memorandum of understanding or contract that's been signed by all parties here. And so there's some, little bit of gray area in terms of how exactly that would apply. I don't know that any of these 3 are going to get jobs. If I had to rank it right now, I would probably put Bill Belichick number 3 out of 3, just because he has another job right now at North Carolina. I would say if you, Rich, using all your years, and I know that you talked with Bill a number of times through, the days at NFL Network, and you've followed his career. And I would just say, when you look at all the photos of Bill Belichick wearing a dark suit and having his arm around some 16-year-old in a high school cafeteria while driving around the East Coast in a van, does that seem like what Bill Belichick wants to be doing right now? If he had his option, do you think he wants to be on the recruiting trail and trying to talk kids into coming to North Carolina, or do you think he wants to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? I'm not saying that that's the focus. I'm not saying what he's doing in North Carolina is not real. And I'm sure Mike Lombardi will respond to this video at the first opportunity that he gets a chance to. What I am saying is, if that call comes from Jerry Jones, we need you here for 2 to 3 years, I think that Bill Belichick would pick up the phone. We'll see if that call comes.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.